The Crimson Fleet had swept across 17 star systems in less than 3 cycles, leaving nothing but scorched worlds and silent space stations in their wake. Their biomechanical warships moved like predators through the void, organic hulls, pulsing with malevolent energy, while crystalline weapons carved through enemy vessels as if they were made of paper. Admiral Vex stood on the command deck of the flagship Devourer, his forearms folded behind his carapace as he surveyed the tactical display. Each red dot represented a conquered world, each gray marker a eliminated fleet. The empire he served had grown fat on easy victories, and he had been their instrument of expansion for decades. "Another pathetic defense," hissed his tactical officer, pointing at the scattered debris that had once been the Centauri defense grid. "These younger races offer no challenge. Perhaps we should request new hunting grounds from the High Command." Vex nodded slowly, his compound eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the observation ports. The conquest had indeed become routine. Most species surrendered after witnessing the destruction of their first fleet, begging for terms that never came. The few that fought did so with primitive kinetic weapons and crude energy beams that barely scratched their living ships. Then the proximity alarms began screaming. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported the sensor operator, her voice tight with confusion. "Single vessel, unknown configuration. It just dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead of our formation." Vex moved to the central display, studying the image that resolved before him. The ship was unlike anything in their databases, angular, where their vessels were curved, metallic where theirs were organic. It possessed none of the flowing lines that marked advanced civilizations, appearing almost crude in its construction. "Size comparison," he demanded. "Approximately 1/10 our mass, Admiral. It appears to be broadcasting a message." The communications officer's translation matrix crackled to life, and a calm human voice filled the command center. "This is Captain Blake of the Earthship Defiance. You have entered human territory and committed acts of war against our colonies. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Laughter rippled through the bridge crew. The audacity was almost refreshing after months of cowering surrenders and panicked evacuation broadcasts. "Response, Admiral?" asked the communications officer. "Tell them they have 10 minutes to surrender before we add their ship to our collection," Vex replied, already turning away from the display. "And prepare the harvesting pods. Their neural patterns might prove amusing." But Captain Blake's response came not in words, but in action. The human ship suddenly accelerated beyond what should have been physically possible, closing the distance to the nearest Crimson Fleet destroyer in seconds. Instead of firing at range like every other species they had encountered, the Defiance performed what could only be described as a ramming attack. Except at the last moment, it released something. The destroyer simply ceased to exist. Where a massive bioship had been moments before, there was now only expanding plasma and debris. The weapon's signature was unlike anything in their experience. Not the focused beams or particle streams they knew, but something that seemed to unravel, matter at the atomic level. "What just happened?" Vex roared, his calm demeanor evaporating. "Unknown, Admiral. The weapon appears to be some form of antimatter device, but the energy release patterns are impossible. Our shields should have absorbed that level of output easily." The Defiance was already moving again, weaving between return fire with disturbing grace. Their weapons tracked it, but the human ship seemed to anticipate every targeting solution, sliding between their beam attacks as if guided by prescience. 2. More destroyers died in the next 30 seconds. "All ships converge on target," Vex commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet channels. "Bring everything to bear. I want that vessel reduced to atoms." The Crimson Fleet had never needed to coordinate against a single enemy ship before. Their tactics were built around overwhelming entire fleets, using their superior numbers and individual ship advantages to crush resistance through sheer force. But as they tried to encircle the human vessel, something unprecedented happened. The Defiance began to multiply. Not literally. Sensors confirmed it was still a single ship, but it somehow appeared in multiple locations simultaneously. Confusing, targeting systems and splitting the fleet's fire. When the phenomenon cleared, 3 more of their vessels were gone, and the human ship was broadcasting again. "You call this unstoppable?" Blake's voice carried a note of disappointment. "We expected better from the species that terrorize the Vega colonies. Our children build better warships in academy exercises." Vex felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest: doubt. This single human vessel had destroyed 6 of his ships without apparent effort, employing technologies that defied their understanding of physics. But more disturbing than their weapons was their attitude. They fought not with desperation or noble sacrifice, but with what could only be described as casual competence. The Admiral activated his personal communicator, connecting directly to the High Command. "This is Admiral Vex requesting immediate reinforcement. We have encountered an unexpected threat." The response came within moments. "Negative, Admiral. Intelligence reports indicate humans are a primitive species that achieved spaceflight only recently. Deal with this minor obstacle and proceed with the Conquest." Vex stared at the tactical display as another of his ships vanished in a burst of impossible light. The human vessel continued its deadly dance among his fleet, striking with precision and vanishing before retaliation could arrive. Whatever intelligence reports the High Command possessed were clearly incorrect. "Sir," his sensor operator called out, "I'm reading massive hyperspace distortions throughout the system. Multiple contacts incoming." The display filled with new markers as dozens of human ships emerged from hyperspace. Each bore the same crude, angular design as the Defiance, but Vex now understood that what he had mistaken for primitive construction was actually elegant efficiency. Captain Blake's voice returned to the communications channel. "Admiral, I'm going to give you the same choice you've given 17 other species. Surrender now, and we might let some of you live long enough to stand trial." For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vex found himself seriously considering surrender. The unstoppable Conquest had met something truly immovable, and he was beginning to understand that the Crimson Fleet had made a fundamental error in their intelligence gathering. They had assumed that because humans were young, they were weak. But age, he was learning, was no substitute for ingenuity, and sometimes the newest predator in the galaxy was also the most dangerous.